Hello, everybody. Welcome to part 3 of day 1 of our coronavirus marathon. Day 1 of 40. Why 40 days? Well, because throughout history, the number 40 has always signified a time of trial and tribulation. And we can either come out stronger, wiser, and healthier, or we can crumble under the monster. And if I have anything to do about it, I'm not going to let that happen to you, your kids, or the next generation. And this next generation, including this generation, is going to need this information. And we're going to go deeper down the rabbit hole of health and nutrition and continue to preach the things we've been preaching at Fit for Life for about 17 years now. And as always, if you have questions, I will answer them. But I'm going to start off by answering a few questions, doing a brief review, and then we will go further into our next topic, which we will talk about the gut microbiome. So remember, the first thing we talked about in that 30-minute video after my preamble was about digestion and what we needed to consider with vitamins and minerals, and how important having good stomach acid is, and chewing our food and preparing our food, and understanding why certain people don't digest healthy food very well, and that the answer isn't to continue to eat more fast food. Instead, there's other ways that we can prepare food and introduce foods in a very methodical way so that the body is prepared to transition. And you'll see what I mean by that as we go into the gut microbiome. First, let me answer a few questions. Somebody had a question about the red light again, and the researcher that I was talking about at Harvard. His name is Dr. Hamblin, Hamblin. You could just look him up on Google or YouTube, but he's one of many people. Brilliant man. If you have the opportunity to hear him speak, you can find anything from 5 to 10 minutes long, or you can listen to 90-minute podcasts and videos and hear him speaking about the benefits of far infrared and near infrared light therapy, which you saw me doing this morning in part 1 of 1, doing my breathing and meditation work. If you didn't get a chance to check that out, I highly suggest you do. Somebody already asked me about Sam Harris's meditation, guided meditation. It's called Waking Up. You have to pay for the app, but Waking Up is a phenomenal app. There's guided meditation in there, there's lessons in there, there's interviews in there. But if you do the guided meditation with me each morning, I promise you I won't steer you wrong. I've been meditating for a very long time, and I followed Sam Harris for many years, along with many others. And those of you who have been at seminars have seen the volumes of books that I have on meditation and breath work. So so that's Dr. Hamblin again for the red light therapy, and Sam Harris Waking Up is the name of the app for those interested in doing some guided meditation. Next question came in talking about the ACE2 receptor, and I was anticipating that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a short link in the newsletter about this. So if you click on it, it's about an 19-minute video that talks about exactly what's going on with this ACE2 receptor. It talks about how it might be a problem and how it might actually be protective, just to confuse you even further. My encouragement is to stay on top of this research and try to understand how it's working, because this virus is accessing basically the virus is accessing what's consequential in your lungs, which is surfactant, through this ACE2 receptor. It's actually ACE2 receptor, the type 2 pneumocyte, which influences surfactant in the lungs, and that's why there's so much attention that's going to be paid to this ACE2 receptor. So I will just put that in there for you guys rather than go into 19 minutes worth of information up here that they're saying in the video. However, if you have specific questions about what's in that video, feel free to shoot me a text and I will clarify whatever seems confusing. There's a lot of biology in there, but if you just pay attention to what's important, I think you'll be okay. So let me do a quick review from what we talked about the other day, just to reiterate. Follow me along real quick. Just think about the average American. How do we eat? Well, normally we eat out of boxes, cans, and packages, and it's super easy access. And we rip it open and we chew it real quick, 5-6 bites, down it, and then we drink a whole lot of fluid while we're eating. And in general, we know that stomach acid is low on people, meaning that they don't have enough. And the acidity of the stomach acid isn't high enough. The older you get, by the way, so the older you get, just by the nature of aging, your stomach acid pH goes up, which means that it becomes more alkaline, and the amount of stomach acid you have goes down. So just by the fact that you're getting older, it's a good idea to start supporting your stomach acid. But then we have bigger problems where, as this bolus of food in the stomach called chyme goes into the duodenum, part of the small intestine, we know that the enzymes from the pancreas and bile from the gallbladder starts to emulsify fats. And I just focused on fats. That's why vitamins A, D, E, and K are up there, and specifically K2, which I talked about in the previous video. But those are fat-soluble vitamins, meaning that if you have a problem with your digestion, which most people do, you are not getting the benefits of those fat-soluble vitamins. And those fat-soluble vitamins, especially vitamin A, D, and E, have a whole lot to do with your immune response. And you can certainly do your research on that, but I assure you that you want to be absorbing these vitamins. It's not as simple as just supplementing. I'm not saying to not supplement, but vitamin A, you can get toxicity from. Vitamin D, you can get toxicity from. Vitamin E, you can get toxicity from. These, similarly with zinc, right? We talked about in the previous video, zinc, you take a whole bunch of zinc, it antagonizes copper, it antagonizes iron. People are talking about, well, this virus seems to be effective with this medication that actually is a zinc medication. And they're right. However, if you look at how that medicine works, that zinc medication, which is a medication, you need a prescription. The zinc is being actually escorted through the cell so that the concentration of the zinc inside of the cell is there. You can't take a zinc supplement and get those zinc saturations in the cell to raise like that. That's why it's a medication. That's why there's a prescription. And if you look up the side effects of that medication, it starts to sound a lot like copper being low, iron being low. You get the idea. So I just want you to be aware that you just don't want yourself to be deficient in zinc, in selenium, in these trace minerals, vitamin C. You could take a whole bunch of vitamin C without much consequence, other than the fact that your stool may be a little bit loose. You may find that happens at higher dosages. But at the end of the day, similarly, some of you know that vitamin C is used as an antiviral. But again, it's only via intravenous. You need to take an IV for it to be effective, truly effective as an antiviral, which would be interesting in this virus. I'm not aware of any research being done for that, but there are certain medications that are being tested literally on human beings as this progresses. And yes, one of them is zinc based, but again, it's a particular, it has a particular escorting agent to usher the zinc into cells to saturate the cell. You cannot do that by just taking a zinc supplement. Nevertheless, here's the point. You eat good organic meats, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, vary your fiber. You're going to get enough zinc. You're going to get enough selenium. You're going to get enough vitamin C. You're going to get enough vitamin A. You're going to get enough vitamin E, and you're going to get enough vitamin K2. K2 is from fermented vegetables. You could Google foods that are very high in K2, yogurts, cheeses, and things of that nature. I'm not a huge fan of some of that food for most people. It's a different conversation we'll get to another time. But notice I didn't say vitamin D. Vitamin D you need to get from the sunlight. Foods have very, very small amounts of vitamin D. Like mushrooms can have it, certain fish can have it, but you're getting most of your vitamin D from the sun. You ever wonder why flu season is the flu season in the winter? Because guess what? Vitamin C is one of the most consequential, it's actually a pre-hormone all right? It's not really a vitamin that helps your immune system. It's one of the most consequential things for your immune system. It's in charge of over 5,000 metabolic processes. So that's what we talked a little bit about how through your digestion, and we went into way more detail than this, that you're likely not absorbing certain trace minerals very well, and you're likely not emulsifying fats very well, including your fat-soluble vitamins, including all of your omega fats, which are extremely important for inflammation and things of that nature. So let's talk a little bit today about the gut microbiome. So once this, first of all, what is the gut microbiome? Well, notice that your mouth, if you were to open your mouth, okay, there's a hole that goes down. But notice that that hole is continuous with my skin. So my skin wraps up and around and it goes into the inside of my mouth. That's one continuous hole. And it goes all the way down out your anus, meaning that this hole, right, you literally have a hole through the middle of your body. Okay, it's one continuous hole. So literally, that hole is literally on the outside of you, meaning that the throat and all these things that go down, in order for it to get in you, it has to permeate that gut. It has to permeate that hose, if you will, which is 20 plus feet long. Now, there are areas where certain things should be happening along this line and certain things that shouldn't be happening. But along this whole line, I want you to understand that you're approximately, you can read different things on here, 10 times more microbial than you are cellular, meaning that you're mostly bacterial. And taking care of these bacteria is really important. And making sure that they pretty much stay where they belong is also really important, meaning that the bacteria in your mouth should not be the same bacteria in your colon. I mean, never mind the bad breath. But I will say that the more you learn about this and understand, you'll realize that it is the cause of many diseases which are being spoken about now, like SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. What is that? That is when the bacteria that belong down in your large intestine start creeping up into your small intestine. And when that happens, there's an asymmetry in the bacteria that are supposed to be there. There's an overgrowth of certain bacteria that are supposed to be there, and the health consequences become clear in people over time. So I please understand, again, these are topics that I go into great detail in seminars. So I'm just going to give you the nuggets here. How do we really pay attention to making sure that our gut is healthy? Well, first of all, please listen to the first video so that you understand how you have to prepare your food, chew your food, and understand how to bolster your stomach acid and why all of this matters. But then you need to start paying attention to the fibers that you eat. So you don't want to just eat or consume just Metamucil, right? What you want to do is vary the fiber over time. Good way to do this is make sure that you're mixing the colors of what you're eating. So you're mixing the colors of your fruits, mixing the colors of your vegetables, and similarly the starches that you eat, mixing those fibers. So whether you're eating, yucca, sweet potato, squash, whatever, higher fiber foods, vary them from day to day to day. It doesn't have to be necessarily from meal to meal. That would be great. But if one day, for example, you have a spinach salad, the next day have a kale salad in terms of leafy greens. If one day you have, yucca, and the next day you have, some ground flax meal in your shake or whatever, great. But you get the idea. Vary it and try to have fiber at every meal. Fiber does a lot of things. We talked a lot in these past 10 weeks in these seminars, mostly about insulin, and we'll get to it in later videos. But insulin is super important to control. And one of the best ways to control insulin is making sure that you get very low on your sugar. So if I could give you guys one thing only to get healthier, make sure that anything that you're consuming that has added sugars, especially anything from high fructose corn syrup, make sure that you really lower it. Now you're going to ask me a whole bunch of questions. What about stevia? What about xylitol? What about these things? So in general, it's a very good idea to get your body away from the taste of sugar, because your brain reacts very, very predictably to sugar and the taste of sugar, very much like a drug addict. And just dampening down that system is a good idea. In later videos, we'll talk about dopamine, and we'll talk about what happens when dopamine gets too high and too low, and what a brain like that starts to look like, and predictable behaviors on either side of there. But that's one of the reasons why we want to start to lower our sugar levels. So getting sugar really low will help the insulin response. Making sure that your fiber is high and varied will help your insulin response. These two things will help you. Along with some people who can handle it, fermented foods can help you. So again, I talked about histamine a little bit in the last video. This is an example of, just because it's helpful with certain things, it may be harmful in others. If you have certain genes that map onto histamine responses, be careful, monitor how your body's responding. If you're getting stuffy, watery eyes, and that histamine response is occurring, then you're going to need to back down those types of fermented foods, which, by the way, those fermented foods tend to also be very high in vitamin K2, which is very good for you. By the way, speaking of genes, that ACE2 receptor, I'm sorry to go back so far here, that ACE2 receptor is also genetic. So if you have a 23andMe report, you can look at your ACE2 gene and you can see what's happening in terms of how it responds. And if you have questions about it, shoot me. If you have a 23andMe test and you can send me the raw data, and you're a client of mine, please, people that aren't clients, I will answer your questions, but I'm not going to analyze your raw data for you. I will answer that for you. So the gut microbiome. So let's go back to it very quickly. How do we keep it really healthy? We must keep sugar low, vary those fibers, right? Making sure that we get different colors, making sure that each day we're getting something a little bit different. So when you do your food shopping, make sure that, hey, these colors are all represented, these colors of the rainbow in fruits, vegetables, starches. Doing this over the course of time is extremely helpful, because as the food moves through your stomach, that food gets broken down into what are called short chain fatty acids. And that's what your gut really like, these gut microbes really like to eat when to stay healthy. Now, there is a whole bunch of research on this topic, and it's incredible how significant these microbes are, but they're always talking to your brain and your body. We know for a fact, for example, that your gut, based on certain foods, it's your gut microbiome that can raise blood sugar in you, let's just say for almonds, and not somebody else. Meaning that how your body's responding to certain foods via the blood glucose response, like you don't want super high blood sugar. Remember, high blood sugar in general, is a symptom of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, I am telling you, is one of the most consequential problems in America today for fatty liver disease, fatty pancreas, for all kinds of metabolic issues. Remember, when we look at the research right now with what's going on with this virus and we see who's at risk, one of the things that people keep talking about is obesity, but it's really this metabolic syndrome. And what we mean by that is it's a cluster of things. Metabolic syndrome is a whole bunch of things. It's high blood pressure, it's being overweight, it's high blood sugar, it's insulin resistance. You get the idea. It's all these things piled on to one another. And why is this likely consequential? Well, because the more body mass you have, remember, this virus, it carries a high viral load. That's one of the things that you're hearing. And the more body mass you have, the more viral load you can carry. There are reasons to believe that women, the data shows that women are more protected a little bit more from this virus than men, meaning men are responding to it a little bit worse than women? Well, one reason may have to do with estrogen and this ACE2 receptor, as well as just total body mass, right? Like men tend to be larger than women, and the viral load that this thing seems to be manifesting is significant. So losing weight, getting healthy really matters here for all of these reasons. So finally, going back to the gut microbiome, varying those colors, varying the fibers, making sure that you understand that these things, these foods, these fibers break down into short chain fatty acids, which is what the gut wants to eat. And understanding that the gut is constantly talking to the body, constantly talking to the brain. The foods that you eat can be consequential depending on what the gut bacteria are doing in your body, meaning the bacteria in your body could be doing something very different than to somebody else. And that's why it's very important to be in tune with what you eat. Now, I will tell you, again, if you want to put your bottom dollar on what's the most consequential, the biggest problem thing that you can eat, it's going to be sugar. It's going to be sugar. What's the best things that you could possibly do that you can bank on for most people over time? It's going to be to vary their fiber. I'm going to remind you that when you start changing your diet, if you're used to highly refined food, if you're used to, drinking a whole bunch of soda and whatnot, and you start to really clean up your diet, your body's going to go, what are you doing? I'll say it again, it's much easier to digest highly refined things. They're already pre-digested for you. And I'll remind you that when things are really broken down, you take all the fiber out of things and you enrich it with all these things, and it makes it easier to just go through the body. But like I said in the other video, your body is meant, its health comes from being strong and resilient. How does that happen? Well, let's just use diverticulitis, for example. That diverticulum is meant to be strong and healthy and resilient. If you keep eating these highly refined foods, you're not making that diverticulum strong and resilient, right? It's like somebody who does jujitsu or wrestling, like they're constantly grabbing your neck. I did jujitsu for a couple of years. And at first, I remember it being really uncomfortable when my neck was being grabbed, my collar, people were trying to choke me out. And then after a while, you just get used to it, right? Your neck becomes resilient. It becomes much, much harder to choke you out. Well, in many ways, your gut is like that. It wants to be strong and resilient and get nuts and seeds and all these things through that diverticulum. It wants to be strong, baby. It wants to be resilient. It wants that. It wants that. So if all of a sudden you start to, and hear me out, you start to put foods through that are nuts, seeds, fibers, and all of a sudden you get diverticulitis. Well, is it the food doing it? Is it the food doing it? Or did you do it to yourself, right? So this is tantamount to somebody who's never worked out before, walks into the gym. I beat their ass for an hour and they're really, really, really sore. Well, first of all, that would be irresponsible of me to do, right? The responsibility is to teach them how to move, go slow, build that resilience. Your gut is no different. So like I said in the previous video, when you make changes, make them slowly and over time. And your digestion will be grateful. Your gut microbiome will be grateful. Okay. So guys, please, I know this is a lot of information and I can go on and on and on and on here, but please support these videos. Give me a thumbs up, share them. I will continue to put out these videos. I'm going to put out 3 videos every day for the next 40 days. There's going to be a breathing and meditation video that I do every morning, and I've been doing it for many, 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 many years. And I will change that meditation each morning to focus on different things, but the breathing techniques will remain the same. And remember how important I talked about breathing was, how important it is to breathe through your nose. If you don't remember, go back to that first video and listen to what I'm talking about in the parasinuses and nitric oxide. Then I'll do a very brief video about some exercise techniques that you can put together in your home as you go through workouts and give you some ideas about what you could do for a workout. Then I will do a learning video for my 3rd video, and I'm going to do this for 40 straight days. I may be broke and out on the street and living, on a curb in 40 days. But I'm going to get this info out to you guys. All right, guys, be well and stay strong.